We've got the agenda. I have one addition to the agenda, so that'll be 7.6. Riondel signs. If nobody has any other additions,
Can I add one thing?
oh, sure.
Just update on streetlights.
Oh, okay, sure. Yeah.
I haven't. That's what I was going to do. Finish I want to do.
Yeah.
See, that is what I'm going to do.
Well, this should all tie together, no?
Well, it's whether you wait directly first. You. Talking to me lately.
You know,
So I'll put it on the agenda at 7.7, and then if it overlaps with yours, Gary, that should be fine. All right, motion to adopt? No? Seconder? I don't think we need a seconder. All right.
Can I just ask?
Yeah.
Craig Sandwich is going to join the.
Yes.
Is he waiting or?
Is
an observer.
We've got an observer, but I don't think that's not Craig.
Okay. I'll just send him a note.
Yeah. If he tried to use the link in our agenda, it doesn't work. I had to go through my Google Calendar to get it.
That's what I do.
So he might be having the same problem. All right. I'm not sure why, but it's a dead link in the email. All right. We don't have a delegate. We do have Craig. I'd like to put him at the top of the agenda if he does join us, so he doesn't have to hang around. And we do have public. Heather, something you'd like to bring up?
No, I was just hoping to hear what Craig had to say and answer the questions that he had.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so yeah, hopefully we'll see David here. All right, under old business, drainage update, I have had absolutely no word. And to the best of my knowledge, neither have Livia or Greg, so no idea what's happening there.
The Greg across the alley from Larry, I guess he had an insurance agent looking at his garage. Your insurance agent said that he understands there's a tender out to redo the drainage on Ainsworth. So that's I don't know how he would know, but
And of course, they won't tell us, will they? No, I haven't. Yeah, that's news to me. Greg Davidson has rerouted the water flow to hose through his property to a hose. Right now, it's going into a bucket outside his property. And I'm not sure he had it. I won't do that online. Anyway, he's sort of helped the situation because it's no longer going on Livia's property. It's all on his. But yeah, I have heard nothing. I should have phoned today. I just never thought of it, just to try and find out what's going on.
If I put it, Matt, so Highway said they were going to do a project themselves, right? But I haven't had a response as to when. So they want to do part of South Ainsworth. We discussed walking or to put in a more efficient, effective, properly positioned, beaten up catch basin in the existing swale. Ainsworth, trench down to the catch basin that's the end of the lane, kind of there, where they've already got a little hand ditch and a couple sandbags, keep the water. They recognize that old drainage system was part of their system, keep water off the road, needs work, and that's what they propose. So I've asked a few times, they'll do it. Generally, that's, they put it into they have a discretionary or a bit of an allowance for different community works projects and aren't big projects. And generally, they'll wait till they do what they're supposed to do for the winter or summer ops changeover. So what we see them doing right now is they finish sweeping, cleaning all the debris and rocks and stuff along the no post guardrails and stuff in the park corners. It's getting kicked back, else keep getting windshield damage, doing all of that kind of cleanup after the last snow. They'll remove all their plows, all that kind of stuff. And then they can look at resetting to do these other projects. So water is slowing down. They did make a commitment standing there, and it's the sort of thing they won't do day one. because the drier it is, the better job they do. They go into there while it's still flowing a little bit of water, they're just gonna make a mess. Whatever they put in there is gonna settle and it won't be right. But they have made a commitment. I would really doubt they tendered it because they do that stuff themselves. YRB has a lot more equipment than any of us have. Regional district side, they haven't got a report back. It may go to the Water Services Committee. I've asked a couple of times. But if there was a firm report on dye test and some result, I think we would have seen it. I would suspect if they haven't gotten any clear results, maybe they want to redo the test or take more time to see where it ends up. But it's not nothing's being done.
No, it's not nothing being, and I have no worries about this drainage here, because it's not affecting anything. The other one is an urgent situation. It was damaging property and it's still flowing full on.
I understand.
You know, that's a concern.
Moving the ground, it's flowing full on, it'll make a big mess, especially if you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah. So,
And
you know,
they won't know what they're doing until they find out where the water's.
okay. But yeah, it would be nice if they just updated people, even if it's saying the first test didn't work. We have to redo them, but something, you know, similar, so that there's some sense that, you know, there is a sense of urgency or we need to deal with it.
Also, as soon as it starts raining again, it's going to be flowing more strongly, at least the one on right on Ainsworth will, that's when it can.
Yeah, well,
The other one will as well.
anyway, so I maybe will try and contact Gary, do you know who did that dye test?
Because Christine,
Simon?
in
Yeah.
a minute, I'm gonna look up and see the last thing Christine just sending this stuff to her.
Nils?
Was it Simon? Somebody named Simon?
No, it's those.
It's Chris Gainham and Alexander Dibilkowski. That's the two staff people. And they have been Alan out of the Arrow Creek Water Treatment Plant, who's regular stuff in the east, some district water. But not everybody has to go trying to chase them. I've asked them a few times. I'm gonna ask them again right now.
Okay, and then you'll let me
Yep.
know.
For you.
Okay. All right, let's go on.
There is nothing on BC bid right now for Riondel, as far as the tender.
Okay.
Actually,
He was just, excuse me, when he was just talking about the air to his shed. As opposed to
No, anyway, it's insurance. Yeah, it's neither here nor get more information. Community center renovations, the fire alarm system is still not completely working. This will be 3 days that they've been debugging the system. This Thursday will be the third full day, because there are bugs in their wiring. They've wired 70 devices built in to the system.
whoa,
And the electricians cannot track down the errors. They need Jay from Troy Fire and Life with his computer to track the system. It's like plugging your car into a sophisticated.
On board deck.
Yeah. So Jay is back on Thursday with the electricians. You know, hopefully they'll be able to figure out everything, because it will work. If you pull an alarm, the alarm's going to go off, but the system is still not fully operational. And it's also not, it's not linked to a monitoring system yet. And I thought that maybe it would just go to our volunteer fire department and maybe to the commission if there's an alarm, but systems apparently don't work that way anymore. You have to go through a third-party monitoring outfit, which in this case is DHC locally. So DHC gets contacted, and then they send out notifications to wherever they need to go. So that's going to cost us money. We're going to have a yearly license with DHC now for monitoring the system. And I don't know what the cost of that will be, but it will be significant. On the upside, I'm hoping that we can piggyback on this and get a bit of security on our doors. If they've got all this system wired in, surely it might not be a big deal for them to run a couple of extra connections to like our main doors, so that if there's an unauthorized door opening, that would also be signal. And there'd be probably very little extra expense involved in that, and it would give us an added level of security. So whether they can do that or not isn't fully determined yet, but I think it's a possibility. So we'll see.
Wouldn't the regional district have a blanket contract with DHC? They must have other rural facilities that do monitoring. It would seem big contract for everybody would be better than a bunch of onesies.
Yeah, I don't know.
But they'll sort that out. Who said just he's joining them? His manager, all the major rec centers and the little bit.
Yeah.
I'm sure we have some global contracts. I'm sure we have one-offs depending where this is. So, but he said he's okay. I don't see him there.
Okay. All right.
There he is.
Oh, is he there? Okay. So maybe we can
Public questions.
He's not on my screen.
Just saying it with Gary.
Oh, he disappeared again.
I guess.
Okay, let me know.
Just I'll leave it.
I'm just going to move along here and so we have him back. All right, and as far as other renovations, painting is all done in the hallways up there. Keith refloored the terrible feature room that we had here. It looks great. And what's going to happen is that the library is going to use that room for their book storage and free up the one closer to the auditorium for things like, equipment for the auditorium, et cetera, et cetera. And I got Keith a tool shelf, which is now in the old senior storage room here. So he's moved all of his stuff out of our office here into there, which makes this place a lot tidier, and plus it works really well for him. So so it's just it's good, and I think that's it for the moment. Big one is the fire system.
Greg is on and his connection's holding.
Oh, so you can hear us, Craig?
Yeah, sorry for being late.
Oh, no problem. Glad it's working. All right. Can I just put you on the agenda then, so you don't have to hang around here with the rest of us?
Yeah, thanks. Through the chair, I'm happy to speak to those. I think it's I was going to explain the S209 budget, just go through that a bit, and then there was also the conversation about the some of the other projects that we want to look at. So I can, if you want, I can tie those two pieces together if you're okay with that.
Sure. Yeah.
Can I if I share something on the screen, is that going to benefit most people in the meeting?
Yeah, we have you on a screen here in the office. So
okay, I'll try to share on Zoom here, and I'll share. So I just let's do that. So just let me know if you can see that. I'll try to hide this thing. So if you can see that spreadsheet.
no, it just says it's. Oh, yeah, it just came up.
Okay, good. So this is the S209 budget through the chair, and I'll just go through that. The way, because the question was raised about reserves and how the budget is built, and I can go into a couple of high level account level stuff, and then I can look at a few of the details in the budget, and then I'll tie it into some of the other work.
Yeah.
That including the financial plan amendment that we went through last time. So if you're okay with that, Chair, I'll just proceed with that.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. Sorry, Chair. Just making sure you guys can hear. So at a high level, the RDCK budgets are built in a very similar fashion with the same accounts, and I'm sure you've all seen this, so I won't bite into it too much. But essentially, requisitions is the taxation. So this year it looks like about a 5%, 200,000 versus 205,000 over last year. If I did my math, that's just over 5% or just under. And sale of services, things that if you were to sell, if you were to sell something out of a concession or a store, so at the rec centers, for example, we sell baby diapers and swim goggles and that kind of thing. So that'd be sale of services. Clearly in Riondel, there's no storefront, so that's where we're at. User fees is, if I open that up, that's essentially just if people are paying user fees for usually for admissions or something like that. Riondel, this service doesn't really have that structured in, so there's a nominal number from last year, so it's been budgeted for this year. I'm not exactly sure how that was generated. Rental income is rental income from the renting of the spaces. So if you rent a room or the gymnasium, that would be the users paying the rental. And then rental income specified as if you had a tenant that was paying rent. And if I opened this up, it would show that there is a couple of rent opportunities in that complex. Grant specified is anything in a grant that you know that you can put you know that you're anticipating or that you know that you've been granted that you could put a number to. And so if I open this up, it would have maybe a couple of and I left the notes out. I apologize, I can't speak to that, but I do know that this number right here from last year, 45,000, that was from the Columbia Basin Trust for the playground, the accessible swing that we purchased. And I could talk about that later on in the capital plan. And then there's another $5,000, and I apologize, I can't speak to that in 2026. Oh, sorry, that's actually the $5,000 that CBT will pay for the remainder of that $50,000 project. So that's what that is. And then we get into things like external contributions contract specified. So that's just covers a couple of other expenses, and I can't speak to what those are in Riondel. Investment income and interest, that's if we have money sitting in account. And so that's showing up at 9,000. And actually what that, there's a bit of a snafu with this budget because that revenue number actually was supposed to play off against the expense number somewhere down here, but we'll balance that with accounting. It's actually a $919 revenue from interest from the reserves, and then we put it to a contribution to reserve, so it goes back in. So we get paid by the bank and then we put it back in reserve, so reserves grow. So I'll talk about that in a second. Transfer from reserves is anything that we had anticipated using for various projects, and because we didn't have that allocated this year, there was actually there's no money currently showing in any budget that you'd be looking at. I added this because since the last meeting, the board resolution, I believe, had played out in this fashion, and so I manipulated this number to show you that there is a transfer from reserves for $55,000 that will go into that fire panel work. And then prior year surpluses, if you're lucky, you'll spend less than you generate in revenue, and you'll have a surplus. Most RDCK services and local government services should always show at least a $1 surplus, or you do a financial plan amendment to make sure you break even. So salaries, so this number is specific to the staff in the complex, and $5,300 is for additional staff just in case some of the other staff are unavailable. So the key number there is for the maintenance staff. I'll just pull over so you can see the note there. So that's maintenance at $33,900, custodial staff at $7,000, and admin staff is budgeted at $11,000. And then, like I said, there's $5,000 for additional just in case. So that'd be backup for Keith, etc. So that's the $57,000 in salaries. Overtime is a number that we put into the budget just in case. We track overtime separately in the RDCK. We don't put it to salaries, and it's a way of tracking where your overages are. Certainly in a sustainable financial model, you should have minimal overtime, but it happens from time to time. So this budget is very modest, but probably reflective of the type of business. Benefits is a percentage of overall salaries, and as I'm looking at this, I'm thinking that if we spent $6,000 last year and budgeted 13, the number we have this year is 14,000. Is in case every single person we have budgeted works every single hour that we have planned for this year. So that number is a percentage of that number. It's about between 15 and 20%. Employee health and safety, travel, some nominal expenses, learning and professional development, that's for staff and any other training required. just some other admin and office supplies and postage. That's just, you know, what it sounds like. Communication is if we do advertising and that kind of thing for various purposes. And notice in Riondel, we did spend for this service $2,600, and so the budget as a carry forward would be looks like a 5-year average increase of kind of CPI. So we're trending positively, and that was good. So that one stayed under budget. Contracted services, this one is for those things that you have on a regular basis. Call it pest control, call it garbage disposal, waste, solid waste, that kind of thing. So that's usually what goes into contracted services. Consulting fees is if we have to pay for professional services through engineers or other consultants, etc. Repairs and maintenance is a number that would go to operations and the park and other spots. So that's what those work orders represent. And so that is a modest number, given that it's a modest operation in Riondel. For example, in Nelson, the repairs and maintenance for the Nelson complex is about $265,000 this year. So that one in Riondel is a little bit easier to track. And repairs and maintenance specified. So where we put as per the financial. Yeah, go ahead.
You mentioned park. Playgrounds in this budget, but the park is under Area A Regional Park.
Sorry, Director Jackman. Yeah, I was just looking at that 106, and in my head, 106 in the other budgets is park. So it's more just grounds. So yeah, it's more of the grounds on that facility. The park itself is the other. Yeah, sorry about that. So 106 is grounds, not park. Thank you. In repairs and maintenance specified, so that's where we put the work for the fire panel. So currently, we added that budget, made it $95,000 because that's repairs and maintenance specified. Operating supplies is anything that you need, such as toilet paper or those things that are on an ongoing basis, cleaning supplies, that kind of thing. Equipment, it's really that number for me. I'm just a couple of numbers that you put in just in case you need something, but certainly it should only be there if you need it. And I think that I can't remember what we spent $25,000 on last year, but I'll
repair of the Kubota. A portion of the Kubota is carried under parks.
Yeah, the Kubota. It's interesting because that's also shared with water, so equipment wouldn't go to repairing equipment. It would be purchasing equipment. So I think that's one that I'll dig in on that one a little bit. Utilities is what it says it is, and given that natural gas, and I know we don't have natural gas on the East Shore, but you do have propane. And electricity are sort of holding. I think that we're okay right now. You don't run off of diesel right now, so that's a good thing. Contribution to reserve. So I'll just skip down through a few. So there's a few other numbers like vehicles. So that would cover off a percentage of the truck that Keith and staff use, and I'm sure water is also allocated a part of that. And then there's a couple of other budgets that have zero, so I won't talk about them. Contribution to reserve. So that's a number that did say $40,000. And what we did with the $95,000 is we made that into zero. So contribution to reserve, it's not quite zero. It's actually 1,200. So I decreased it by 40,000. So there's 1,200 left. So combined with that 40,000 and the 55,000, that's how you got the 95,000 for the fire panel work. And then go ahead, Gerald.
That's where I have a question. Looking at this budget, it looks like we're not taking care of this building. It looks like we've totally eliminated our contribution to reserve, which does not look good to an outside agency, granting agency. They want to see that we are supporting our facilities. So why don't we just take the money we need for the fire system and the other work straight out of capital reserve? Because that's what the reserve is for.
Yeah, through the chair, I think that there's two ways to do it. One is to show a contribution to reserve and a transfer from reserve, but it's a SAW anyways. And I think that if you have that board resolution, you can always explain that as we did that, we had a contribution to reserve, but we drew from reserves. And the way we did that was through an accounting practice to make that contribution less and make the transfer more. And I think that I know you're trying to tell a story or you know, to somebody that would say, well, you're not contributing to the overall, but you're essentially spending $95,000 on upgrading the building. So there's a commitment to managing the asset, you know, proactively there. But I think that I know what you're saying. I think when we talk about the reserves, I'll get to that in a quick second, about where those are at and the health of that as it relates to other projects. But I do know that our practice is, instead of showing a transfer to and a contribution, or a transfer from and a contribution to, we just try to make one or the other, not both at the same time. It's more of an accounting practice.
It does, like I say, it doesn't have good optics for someone that doesn't understand the ins and outs of the system.
So, Gerald, if I can, yeah, you're right. Oh, somebody else is.
If somebody else is out there, listening to the meeting, could you please mute your microphone?
So a few other departments have take a different approach. In waste management, we always do the in and out, like Gerald is asking for, partially because for landfills and the like, we have statutory reserves. We have major capital project reserves, and then we have stabilization reserves. We have 3 subregions, and we move money between west and central subregion based on actual costs. So we don't try to use the reserve line to offset capital without stating there would have been a reserve contribution, so it shows it's into the reserve, and then it's canceled out by the withdrawal from the reserve. But it's put right beside the line item that it's for, with the notes, like you have notes, because those services between, you know, solid waste, residual, recycling, organics, 3 subregions are so complex that we always in those services have used to put it in as a reserve contribution, what Gerald's asking for, and then show when it was taken out in the same budget and the line item with a little note beside. Because of the complexity, that is made good sense. This is far less complex. Also, if we're to put an honest contribution to reserve on our big box rec centers, what would the number be? We got to put a reserve to replace $60 million assets at each of the 3 sites over a 50-year cycle. That would be an in and out contribution that wouldn't, we just couldn't show it.
Yeah.
But there's a reason in the complex services for doing what Gerald's asking for, and it has helped all the directors when they get the budget understanding blow by blow what's going on. It could help this commission, because this commission changes faces too, year over year.
Yeah, I think Director Jackman, it's a good point that if we lose continuity through people that sit on the commission or the board, or even from staff, that you'll lose the plot. But you know, I'll use Castlegar, the arena service, for example, S222 has a reserve that actually is allocated to 3 different places. And so that there's a parks reserve, and then there's I believe 2 reserves. There's 2 parks reserves and 1 arena reserve, and those would not be impacted by another one. So those are more or less sacrosanct, and so there is a way to protect those. But for this one, just as an accounting measure, I think, Gerald, that's what we did. And right now, you know, the resolution from the board could always be amended too, because we are going to go back. We are going to go, if that's the desire of this commission, to keep telling that story that way, because we are going to go back and ask for another financial plan amendment. But I'll get to that in a quick second. And all these other transfer oh, sorry, go ahead, Gerald.
I do like the story because, again, if we show our budget to Columbia Basin Trust, and they see that we're putting in, well, in the past, they would have seen we're putting in 100,000 into reserve, which is pretty impressive. If they look at it this year and see we're putting in 1,000, that's not very impressive. And I don't know if CBP staff would be aware of why there's only $1,000, or they would just see that number and go, boy, that's not very helpful.
Well, no, like I said, it's told in the top half of the story, where you spent $55,000 to pay for that needed repair, right? And I think that that's showing commitment to improving the asset over time. But I'll just speak to these last couple here. So transfer to other service, I believe that one is for, no, it's not general admin. General admin is that one. That's the one that everyone pays into for head office, the IT fee. Community services is the fee that all community services services pay into to support the overhead for community services. So that would be part of my salary, Trisha Davison's salary, and the overhead that goes along with that. Community services A109, that is essentially a department or a division of community services that is the programming division, and so there's a separate there's another transfer too, and then those two fees. Sorry, and what this is showing is that in 2025. That was a transfer to community services of 24,008, and this year we've changed it into a transfer to A109, which is essentially the same thing, but it's a different transfer too. So it's a slightly different account. So there's an accounting switch, if you can see what I'm doing there with the cursor. And then transfer to asset management is a new service approved by the board to manage assets in the RDCK, and so there is a transfer from all services to help fund that new service within administration. And then the capital expenditures this year, and I've got a few numbers to show you in this column in the gray. I'll speak to that in a second. The capital expenditure this year is to essentially install the accessible swing. So we bought a double accessible swing with the Columbia Basin Trust money or funding last year, and we're going to install it this year, as well as a bit of an accessible trail from the parking lot to the swing. So that's what that $25,000 is in the capital budget. Right now, it doesn't have a cap code. It's got just an OBR code. And actually, it's got an operating code by the looks of it. And so we'll do some accounting to make that into a cap code. So that's what the current capital expenditure plan looks like. So I'm gonna stop there and answer any more questions before I get into the other half of this.
The question
Yeah, we have someone here, Heather from the Riondel Community Association has a question for you.
Hi, Heather.
can you go back up to your top of your list where you were talking about fees, user fees and rental fees?
Yeah.
Can you clarify for me, is the Riondel Community Association a user or are we rental income?
I am gonna say that if I were to open my notes right now, if I were to take the time and open this up, I'm gonna say that you pay rental income specified.
Okay.
Based on my understanding of the way this budget is built in the notes I looked at earlier.
So this year is a unique year for the RCA. We said we would pay rent on the auditorium, the media lab and the activity room, and we're paying a higher rent, $5,000, which we came up with, that number. So does that mean that the other rental income is if an event or someone outside of the user group?
Yeah.
Or
through the chair, that's what that means. So the one time or sporadic renter, they came in and rented the gymnasium for an event, that would show up in rental income, and rental income specified is when you have, so in Creston, for example, the curling club at the complex, they're included in the rental income specified, where people that rent the arena for a hockey tournament would be in rental income. So tenants or people that are established in the facility would be their revenues tracked separately.
There's an element here that's not obvious. We get rental income from the ambulance society. And that's probably the bulk of one of those numbers, is the ambulance rental. So most of our income,
so that
is from rentals.
Number is right there, Riondel Community Medical Building.
Yeah, so that's where that number is.
No, the medical building is Circle of Friends. The ambulances. The ambulance started at $5,000. It's probably still $75,000. We started at $5,000 if you will. Whatever they go.
So one-time rentals, we only get maybe $500 a year.
So what, when a non, community user group is using those three rooms, what does their fee go to?
Oh, it should be this one, rental income specified. Or sorry, I'm sorry, I'm gonna close it, rental income, yeah, 42,040, this one right here.
Okay, but I mean, what do you use that money for?
Oh, so that money is, that's what, and that's the good thing about this budget is you can see that all the money is tracked, all the revenue is tracked and all the expenses are tracked, so the story is right there. So that's what all of the revenue is used for. Our budget essentially works out to a 6 cent surplus this year, so we're gonna spend everything other than 6 cents. And so all of the revenue goes to all of the expense.
Okay.
And so last year, because the report is showing a $40,000 surplus, and when the report is run, that's a net surplus. You know, you generated more revenue or you didn't spend the expenses, and then we budgeted very judiciously at 25,000 for a surplus, knowing that 40,000 may have been may change before the end of the year. So that right now we're also looking at 25,000 for a surplus where maybe there was a few extra $1,000 in there, but essentially our mandate in local government is we cannot necessarily plan for a surplus unless we were to use that surplus to generate revenue for future years, and call it reserves.
All right, thank you very much I didn't understand the difference between the two, so thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Craig, just one more reserve question. Presumably next year, barring any unforeseen circumstances, the contributions to reserves next year will be back up to more usual historical levels?
Yeah, it's an interesting, thanks for the question. I think that service by service, so between Castlegar, Nelson, and Preston and the rec service, there's a different approach. And a lot of the times it's about the need. And so if you know that there's a need coming up, you can start to plan ahead and you can say, we're going to need $600,000 for this project. Let's start saving now. And it really comes down to a decision that the board makes about setting that requisition number. And locally, then Director Jackman can tell you, he with the services that he oversees, he'll be mindful of that, given that there's people's sensibilities and because we could tax a 10% increase every year to pay off all of our asset management needs and maybe generate giant surplus, but people can't necessarily afford 10% every year. And in fact, 7% a year doubles your requisition in 10 years. So there's a number there's a very kind of happy number that people would be glad to pay for the services. And then there's a number where they think that that might not be beneficial. But for the Riondel Community Center, I think that generating greater reserves is a good idea. And I think that one of the things that we need to do, and I'll show you in the last half of this, the plans for other renovations and where that money could be spent as it relates to reserves, because yes, essentially without any external funding, we won't have reserves if we do all of those projects. And that's, it really is it's a bit of a subjective thing, and there's a bit of choice involved, but there is some conversation to be had about deliberately saving, taxing the ratepayers for savings.
And if I can add, Gerald, because I have the 5-year open here and Craig doesn't have it open. So this year, forecast was reserve contributions have dropped back down to about $37,000 a year. Now, if you said it was a $5 million stick frame building, and you figured you needed about 2% of that per year put aside, that's the 100,000 you were putting aside. The condition of the building at any time you do that asset management calculation makes a difference whether you're going to put it aside 2% a year, 1% a year, or whatever. The building was not in very good shape. You've built up a surplus, a reserve, and as Craig just said, you're going to burn through a lot of. There's going to be 3 or 4 more financial plan amendments, and you're going to draw it right down. So the question is then, in the long term, do you get back to that 100,000 a year contribution if the calculation was 2% of the rough value 2.5%. I don't know what numbers you're using, Craig, but stick frame, you need at least that much to stay ahead of the
Yeah.
buildings.
Yeah, facility condition index, that's another number, another conversation we're gonna have with the elected officials and you know, about what a good practice is and how to put that into practice on a regular basis. So there's no second guessing midstream or post-election if contributions to reserve are higher than people have an appetite for. So that's the operating budget for.
Could I do one
S2?
other
Yeah.
point, Craig,
Okay.
if I can? It just comes to mind. Elected and community have developed a really bad habit of thinking, oh, we'll just get a grant or we get a grant for half. We've been fabulously successful at getting grants for significant percentages of these upgrades in the past. We got to stop doing it. The feds are in debt, not quite as bad as they thought, but they're in debt. Province is massively in debt. We're not allowed to go into debt. So that's another reason we've never been putting beside us at the 2 to 3%. Kept crossing our fingers, and that has to end.
But just related to that topic, if you go up to the top of your spreadsheet, that 205,000 number, that's sort of an absolute. This is a heavily taxed community. Riondel has taxed it 3 or 4 times the level of any other community on the East Shore, I think. And that's a level of commitment to support. But you can't just assign a percentage. You know, you have to look at the absolute number. That is a hardship for the community as it stands. It's why we insisted that there not be a significant percentage increase this year. And that's not going to change. So, yeah, it would be nice if we could put in 7%, but that's not realistic and as far as the impact on the community is concerned.
So I agree that the asset management plan done correctly calculates a theoretical contribution. Your water system's been calculated over a 25-year and a 100-year period. There's some elements of it will, treatment plant will be way longer than the pipe in the ground. This, you do the asset management plan calculation, come up with a number. Then it's a good idea to compare that to average percentage of value of the building replacement as just a touchstone. Then you have the conversation around level of service. Because if you don't want to spend the money, you get a lower level of service. It's attractive, less useful, and if the corners of the building, like the water feature room, just plain shut down and barricade it up. Or you say you're going to demolish part of the building. So agree, Jeremy. You don't just stick a number in this, say run with it. You should have that number in mind before you start talking about if you're going to continue to be able to use the entire building. The poster child is that other building, the old gymnasium over there. Serviceability, 0. You know, it is not an asset. Complete liability.
Yeah, because it was never taken care of.
Yeah.
So we use that as an example. This building is being taken care of. So let's use this as our example.
Yes, but the amount of money calculated to keep it at the current or the after current rental service level, serviceability, that amount of money, you'll either make a decision to keep putting that amount of money in, investing, or let it get run down again. That's the community conversation.
Or you use community volunteer effort and other avenues.
Yeah. Anyway, I didn't want to start a mean debate here, but Craig has to do the calculated thing. That's his job. Calculated asset management replacement costs.
Yeah, theoretical numbers are like you guys were saying, theoretical numbers are great, but it really comes down to what people have an appetite for and what they're willing to pay for. And sometimes you can make those subjective decisions and you really have to think about the impacts down the road. And we're in that same situation with the major rec services right now. So just to keep in mind that the Riondel situation is definitely being getting a lot of attention based on you know things that Gerald you were just talking about. So all you know that's the budget for that, and I'll try to make now. I'm going to make my screen a bit bigger so you can see the numbers because I'm going to get into a smaller section here. So the current reserves after, and actually I'll make that. It says 55,000. The current reserves at 419,521, which is as of right now today, once we make this contribution of 55, is going to be 364,521. So that's what is essentially in reserves after we've done the fire panel work. So with that list of projects that we were endeavoring to work with the Columbia Basin Trust on, that Patrick has been engaged with Gerald and others on. I'm going to tie these 8 together just as for a conversation piece. And certainly with Heather, the conversation about the community kitchen and, you know, the scope of work that they've identified, paint the walls, install new flooring. And just so you know, I realize that it is coming from the community association, but as an RDCK asset, I look at these things holistically as one building, one set of projects. So I'm going to wrap it together. I realize that there's different initiatives and there's different groups involved, but I'm going to start to combine these just to take a look at the whole picture. So the kitchen scope is paint the walls, install new flooring, purchase new stoves and refrigerator, designate a specific dishwashing area, purchase and install commercial dishwasher, upgrade electrical, build the new island, purchase service trolleys and a variety of kitchen equipment and more counter space. So that's that scope of work. And so the budget that Heather has provided is 61.5, and there is external funding, including a bequeathment and the community association. So there's 36.5, net 25. And I'm just going to redo my calculation here because that number should be this number right there. Oh, look at that. We have more than we need. So concession stand re-siding, so 5,000 for that. Gymnasium stucco, before we'd had a quote for about 15,000 a couple years ago, but then we had a contractor give us a quote last year for 42,000. So I just threw in a number of 50,000. So that number's there. Accessible washroom, and I highlighted this in orange because I'm not quite confident in that number. I'm not exactly sure of the scope of work. And vehicle charging station is yellow because I do have a few questions about that. Accessible doors, and I believe that's the main entrance. That 20,000 is probably close, but it's probably more like 25 or 30, depending on the size of the doors and any other. You know, I think the one thing to remember for all of these projects is that for a public facility, architects are required now. And so a lot of these are, you know, we're going to have to consider which are priority, and you know, certainly if the CBT is like, we're happy with that list, we'll help you as much as we can, and they fill in this gray box here, then that's gonna make this net number look a lot better, because essentially with the current funding, all of these projects, we're going to be left with 16,000 in reserves. And so I'll just go through it again. So feasibility for a backup generator, that number. Gerald and I kind of tossed that one back and forth, and I know that Director Jackman will tell you what a generator costs at the health building in Crawford Bay. But 110 is a number for a feasibility, and then some shed work. So I'm just going to make sure that math adds up, because I see that number and I'm like, I don't necessarily know if it's true, but yeah, it's $348,500. And
Well,
so
I
then
would start.
Go ahead, Gerald.
I'd start by taking out number 5. I mean, that's absolutely not an essential for anything at this point.
Yeah, and that's
it's a nice to have, but you know,
Chicken tires.
you know,
yeah, no, I think that's a really good, you know, it's part of the discussion is you know, these things that we wish we need or would enhance our facility. Or, you know, I did have a question about, I thought we had just installed one, but you know, I could make that a 0. And then, you know, we're looking, you know, so that's an optional one. And then, but then remember that these two numbers might be a little bit undervalued, or, you know, so we're going to have to figure that one out. And then this one as well is also a, you know, I do understand. I lived in Crawford Bay for 9 years, and I know when the power goes out, even the internet goes out. And so I do know that that's a major hassle. And so a backup generator for that facility isn't a terrible idea. It's just a very expensive, good idea. So I think that's another number that we'll have to explore. But even if we took that out and just said we're going to do that for future, and if I said that we're going to make the accessible washroom a little more reasonable and the door a little bit more reasonable,
Got a solid quote for the washrooms. That 7,000 was pretty accurate.
For
We're not doing
accessible,
anything fancy. We're not doing anything fancy here, and we have a solid quote.
well,
It'll
I'll
be
tell
great.
you, we just did an outdoor bathroom in Creston at the complex, and even to call it accessible, we had to go through some major code compliance. And so there's a lot to that you wouldn't anticipate, and an architect is gonna tell you that you actually need a change table for a full-size adult. And those aren't, so I think that's the conversation, Gerald, to have about what accessible actually means. So I think that, what I would say is if we were to revise this, and even if the CBT were to kick in some money, or even if they weren't, then your net reserves right now, if we were to do all this year, and I know we talked about doing the kitchen in January, or later on in the year, then you're still looking at 188,000 in reserves after taking those two things out. So that's kind of the state of it. And the planning right now is I've sent that list off to Patrick at the CBT as a what do you think your commitment could be on this? And then if we get positive feedback from him, and then we have a deeper discussion, Gerald, with the needs of the facility, and certainly coming up there with Stu Durning and taking a look at things, because the fire panel scenario was something we didn't anticipate. It certainly didn't anticipate it being that expensive. And when the dust settles on this budget, knowing where every nickel and dime is in the budget, then we can do some better planning. But right now, worst case, no funding from CBT. And if we were to apply these numbers and do all this work, you're looking at a net 188 still in reserves. So you will be spending 176 at least on these items.
I know that CBT is committed to several of these projects.
Yeah. It's to what level, I think, is the question, Gerald. I think that's the only thing is, and then we would get the board to say, give permission for staff to apply to the CBT for the funding for these projects, and then do the financial plan amendment to show the grant funding and the capital expenditure too. So that's where that is at, and we're gonna wait to see what Patrick says, and then certainly, Gerald, we can have more conversations. And if like I said, the hard part is, if we really get into designing these projects and we bring an architect in, well, there's some money that we're just going to spend, whether we do the project or we don't. And so we have to be very deliberate in that approach. So
can we get away with doing renovations without calling it accessible? What if we just renovate the bathroom? And
yeah, no, I think that if you're just gonna paint and stucco or side, or sorry, drywall and a few fixtures, and that's not a terrible idea. I think the hard part is for a recreation center, especially with the RDCK's approach to renovations and BC building code. It is it's a very tricky scenario where you do a renovation to a public facility without meeting code.
Yeah, but we are sort of a grandfathered building. So there might be some flexibility there.
We would definitely consult with an architect on that one. And I think the good news is about these, if we go down the road for these, that one architect is all we're gonna need.
But
Right.
why would we need an architect? If we say we're just doing a simple bathroom repair, why would we need an architect?
Well, I'll give you an example. We replaced the exterior doors on the Castlegar complex, just like for like. And we needed an architect because code required it that for public facilities, an architect is required. Even for the exterior bathroom at the Crescent complex, an architect was required. So there is, I can't answer every single scenario. Certainly, if you were just to touch up some paint or replace something without making any major renovations or additions or something, maybe you could get away with it, but I can't say that in a public meeting with all confidence.
Okay, so it's something to be considered.
Yep.
Is there, okay, sorry, this is Heather questioning again. Is there anything that needs a fancy person to do their concession stand re-siding?
I would say for that one, I can probably tell you no. That one, and the siding, the stucco on the building is just a repair, a like for like repair, so it wouldn't need architect. To put siding on the concession stand outside is not gonna need an architect.
So if that was something, say that the RCA was willing to pay for, we would just ask you, you'd say, okay, and we could just go ahead and do it?
Yeah, if that was a $5,000 or an in-kind or something like that, where we could, we see the benefit in doing the project, and it's really just about funding and getting it done. We could make that happen.
Okay.
Can I answer a more general budget question that just came up on the side here? I guess what I took it as, doesn't the RDCK have other kind of money towards buildings and
Like a capital
facilities?
project, as
So-
opposed to every project.
Yeah, so, every service in a regional district budget has to stand on its own. You can't take money from Creston. People paying to Creston, all of the town, all of B, all of C, and only part of area A. We can't use them. We can use Craig, but only if we pay part of his salary under the allocation service, A103. We can use student attorney, we can use people, but everything is accounted for within every budget. The only time you see kind of fund money almost, it is a grant scenario. Sometimes we'll get money that's not rigidly allocated as a grant, and we got this COVID recovery fund as an example. So then what happens is you get the directors in the room politically arguing that, over the decades, this or that has received a little more favor with these major grants and build Canada or do this or do that. And then sometimes you see a little bit of money spun out of the bigger pot allocated to the regional district, a building like this. That is exactly what happened. We did get roofing money from one of those funds a few years ago. Per capita, you got lots. For area A, with our 2,143 or whatever official people, Canada, we didn't get lots. But you can't be moving money around where our service works. In an incorporated town or village or city, they move money all the time. You hear Vancouver, they move $500 million to do this park and this pool and this and that. We can't do that. Just not allowed. And my fear, the reality is we're not going to see those big recovery grants and generous pots of money from the feds or the province because they're broke. They're not even funding their own hospital projects. If I'm on 2 hospital boards and we're debating about that, which ones are they delaying and which ones, as we saw in the news, they've actually just canceled and they slip again. So this budgeting mechanism, using the reserve within every service, is the appropriate way to go. And then you guys are doing a good job of smoothing out the reserve, looking for other money, picking off the easy stuff first. And then the other stuff where we're up against whatever full-on architect, engineer, tendering, the rules are very funny about how you handle stuff. So I like the way you're doing all the little bits you can do and just sort of, go to select tender. That will save you money in the long run and employ locals.
And I think, Nils, you can correct me on this. I don't think the shed was expecting us to pay for the paint room, were they?
No,
No. So that 15,000 shouldn't be there.
So I guess so Gerald, that's my question. So if there's external funding, if the shed was gonna pay that, then I would just put that number in there. And then, I gotta carry this forward now. Equals this plus this, and then that would take, the burden off of everything else. So it didn't translate into the reserves number, but so yeah, if that has external funding, then we still have to recognize that work is, if it's just adding, if they're not making any major renovations to the building and they're just adding equipment or appliances or appurtenances, that's fine. FF&E, I don't have to really track that. But if it was something that was fixed to the building, I'd have to put that into a budget.
So sorry, Heather again.
Hi, Heather.
Then why can't the kitchen be the same way?
Well, the
changes.
kitchen, I think the point there, Heather, is I think that currently all of those assets are owned by the RDCK as much as I can tell you. So I think that there would have to be some sort of consideration through a formal agreement that the association would put their equipment in the RDCK's kitchen. And you know, that donation, typically what happens there is there's a donation to the RDCK of the value, or certainly the title to that equipment. And that's what we've done in the past. So but if you're also recommending doing flooring and cabinets and counter space, that would be something that we have to track.
Okay, so it's open for negotiation.
There's it sounds like there's a few moving pieces to that particular scope of work and you know, we would have to definitely identify in a formal agreement who owns what and who contributed what, etc. So you know, so that in case the relationship ever dissolved for whatever reason, that you know, each party could take their property.
Sounds like a divorce.
Well,
Okay.
we've got a few situations like that happening in the RDCK there is you know, some stuff left over. Yeah.
No, fair enough. I totally understand that. Thank you.
Okay, Gerald, I think that was those two agenda items, correct?
Yeah, I think that covers it. Yeah.
So then my plan for that is, and we should probably have a meeting here in the next maybe next week, and then we can just talk about you know, finalizing this list and where the funding is coming from and really nailing down the scopes, and then we can get feedback from Patrick at the CBT, and we can know if there's any external funding, and then we can really start this to roll where the board gets involved and gives us another financial plan amendment for these pieces.
So are you looking at an in-person meeting?
Yeah, no, what I'm saying, I would come up there with Stu, and you and I and Stu could just kind of go through the building and really start to detail these scopes that we've got laid out. And then the one thing that we'll have to probably do is bring in an RDCK project manager to lead this if Stu or I didn't, and I know we probably don't have capacity for this. Or we could talk about how we could structure that, just to make sure that we've got good governance on this, on these projects.
Yeah, so I think you'd want to have any of the commissioners who are interested in this involved in that, plus representatives from the community association.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, if you wanted to set it up like that, we could have a sit down. But it would be more just to define the scopes of work for these pieces. And then, like I said, the numbers I'm not 100% confident in them. So you'd want to assess how we came to those numbers, and then even put some softer costs to some of this to make sure that we're not underestimating or undervaluing the budget.
Yeah. So could you send us a copy of the original list that you had up here with all of the possibilities? Could you just email me a copy of that I could send out to the other commissioners?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay.
Yeah, so any tentative thoughts on when you would like to meet?
I'm just gonna I would shoot for next week. It's strangely my calendar's fairly open next week, so I would shoot for someday midweek next week, and try to come up to Riondel deliberately. So I'd try to give you a couple of days notice anyways. It's a good drive in the morning, so I wouldn't want to be there too late in the afternoon.
Yeah, so yeah, let us know. So somewhere around maybe Wednesday, Thursday?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know, does anybody have conflicts with those?
Wednesday would work for me. We're gone Thursday.
Wednesday would be better for me.
Okay, so Craig, it sounds like Wednesday might be a day to aim for.
Okay, let me just
Possibly.
just pull up my
And
calendar.
Big Ferry's back on, so you should be able to get back to.
Oh, I'm in Creston.
Fingers.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, so no, Wednesday would be great if you could make it work.
What
Or
about
even,
what about 11 o'clock on Wednesday?
yeah, I'm seeing a lot of nods.
Okay, I'll put it in my calendar and then I'll flip it to you. Riondel Community Center. Okay, let's do that. And was there anything else on this agenda that you needed an answer to any questions on, or anything I needed to provide for that, Gerald?
I don't think so. That's a lot of food for thought.
Okay.
Right. So, yeah, we'll digest that part.
Perfect.
Good, thanks for joining us, much
Yeah,
appreciated.
thanks for having me. We'll see you guys again. See you next
Good
week.
overview, good overview. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, Jim.
80,000 for a charging station?
Yeah, but if you have a fast charger, well, there,
$50,000 for stucco.
All right,
Nail some cement outside.
well, it's just painful, because we did have a quote, what was the original quote?
15,000.
15. All right, fire alarm. Once our panel is working, we will have to do the occasional drill. And that's to be done when the building is occupied. Okay. So just heads up for that. There is an instruction sheet for the fire panel. Evan just laminated a copy. We'll post this right next to the fire panel. But basically all we do if the panel goes off is silence the panel, and then it's up to whatever the problem is to deal with it. But silencing the panel is useful, just because now, if we hadn't been able to do that, we would be sitting here listening to the panel beeping for a week. IT update.
This could probably come off. I think the bulk of the stuff that involved the regional district is done now completely. There's still a few things ongoing, but they're internal things like specific to the library. And we may put it back on because Haslo Infonet applied to a Ready grant to do some community oriented things in here. And they did get some funding for that. So once we know timelines and when that's going to happen, and put it back on as a separate.
Now, what about internet access in other rooms, like the auditorium?
That's sitting right there. It's just for Commissioner Stevie to do something with it.
Oh, okay, so
I think we can take this one off.
Okay.
The primary switcheroo with the fiber and all that stuff is done. Like I say, Caslo Infonet may have through the Ready grant thing some community services things to add here. But until I know timing for that, I'll add that when that comes. Yeah.
So, okay, so we won't worry about that one. The chair dolly, did you want to move ahead with that? I'm not sure where we left that.
I have no idea. The last I heard about it was our last board meeting, and you said you thought maybe the commission.
Yeah, we talked about it. So.
You were gonna send a picture of
Yeah, I haven't been in the Wendell Hall. I was at the Wendell Hall out. Moved chairs and moved tables and I failed to take a picture. Now that you mentioned it, that was their Easter setup. I volunteered to help in the dunk tank, but I didn't. Yeah, I get to take photos, but you have the same thing in mind as I have. It's just a standard.
Standard dolly.
Yeah.
Little kick plate at the back. Yeah.
But if you also take the regular chair, you see one of those chairs, and you put the little flat bar out, over it and back, just like 8 inches. So that the chair will sit on that little wider base, so the legs don't fall off.
Yeah.
And then when you slide it in, this little flat bar out comes maybe half an inch below the actual bottom of the chair. When you tip it back, it takes care here, right there, so they won't fall off. You can go over bumps and up and down stuff, and it's much easier. If you're going to be welding on the dolly, you might as well add that little bar. And that's what I was going to take it from. I really need to do that.
And Gary, when you come next time, can you bring
So,
a chair?
See the plastics just disintegrated.
RCA buys a dolly, I'll modify it to pick up the chairs.
Yeah.
That's what you said.
I say if RCA buys a dolly, just a regular furniture dolly, it doesn't have to have straps, just a regular dolly, I'll modify it to pick up the chairs.
Okay, does that allow then a whole chairs?
Yeah.
Well, 8 or 10.
Hand of time, hand of the truck and hand of the top of the.
Okay, I can't commit to that. We have a meeting coming up on Thursday.
Okay.
Can you call it hello? Can you call it hello?
Well, I thought Gerald was being replaced because there's an item to move to Chair Dolly instead of.
Okay,
Did you make two of them?
uh,
Is it worth having two? Then if you're doing stuff in the gym or whatever, chairs.
Let's do one, let's see if it works.
all right.
It must be $15,000. Well, an engineer too.
Cause it's a fast one.
All right, new business. So 7.1 was exactly what Craig just presented, so we'll just say that's been done.
Yeah.
7.2, I think everybody's probably aware by now that they're taking out something like 100 truckloads of logs off the different property. This is something I meant to look into, I didn't. Normally in the past, the logging companies have notified us so that we could notify the community. That didn't happen. There's no law that says they have to, especially this is private land logging, but I think it might be nice if they did. You know, when there's that much traffic involved, it might be nice. So I will try and contact the company tomorrow and just say, you know, they might never come back here again. This might be a one-shot deal, but I think it's good for companies like that to make the community aware.
And could that be the kind of thing too, if they're driving a logging truck on a highway is one thing, but driving a loaded logging truck down a residential street is kind of different.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's, I looked at the name on the truck, it was a Bruder log haulers. So I'll see if I can track them down. If not, I might just try and catch a truck right as well.
One other issue that may not be anything, but there's ravens that nest in that area. Is there any protection for ravens?
No, I don't know. I actually think you can hunt.
Really?
Yeah.
Where are the ravens?
They're in those where they're logging, right behind, Liz and John. Keller. Yeah, right behind there in all those tall trees. There's ravens that nest there every spring.
Okay.
So they were flying around today, but they're taking out the trees almost right to the house.
Well, they're gonna take out the logs off Tyler's property too.
Right?
Yeah, so I doubt there's protection.
Common ravens are protected.
We have neighbors that feed the ravens, okay,
Yeah.
every day.
Ooh.
We have neighbors that feed the ravens every day. In our back alley, every day there's 12 ravens, 3 or 4 times a day. 3 or 4 times a day, all day. Yeah. It's just people on that end of Riondel
Yeah.
who feed deer too.
Okay.
All right,
One thing it's doing though, I think it's disturbed the nesting for the turkeys. The turkeys all go up in the fires to nest, and it's really upset their rhythm this year.
They'll go over to the orchard.
Yeah, I don't know where they're
Probably,
going.
yeah.
7.3 is bizarre. And again, you're probably all aware of this, that someone walked off with the deep freeze from the kitchen. It's obviously someone who knew this building,
Yeah.
because there's no way you knew that anyone would know there was a deep freeze in that kitchen. And I thought maybe we'd get word of what had happened, but so far nothing. Partially it's my fault because I left the kitchen unlocked because of all the electrical work that was happening. I didn't really think that someone was gonna walk off with a deep freeze if I did that. Yeah, so that's unfortunate, and like I say, it is worrisome because, somebody would have to know the building. And unfortunately, our little cameras weren't operational. So you have no way of tracking that. But Heather, I think someone has offered to replace the.
It's been replaced,
Oh, it has been replaced.
Yeah. an anonymous donor.
Wow. Great community spirit, wonderful to see, but yeah. It's still
Very bizarre.
very bizarre. And maybe somebody will at some point say something that clues us into who and how.
To put a little ad in the main street, say, anybody has any idea, squeal. Squeal
7 point
softly, because they need to be dealt with. It's awful.
Yeah, disappointing. 7.4, I donated a ping pong table that I had in my garage to Community Center Heating. It's a really nice table. I haven't used it forever, so I thought it's better here than sitting in my garage.
Thank you, Jared.
Financial report, just wanted to comment on looking at the quarterly reports from the various services here. I think some of the things sort of came out in trades. We're looking at the overview. So under water, there is 146,000 assigned for capital projects in water this year. There's 75K for membrane replacements, which is, I think it's been about 7 years, so that's not bad.
That's the filters treatment.
The filter, yeah, at the water treatment plant. There's 25K for intake repairs and 46,000 for water treatment plant upgrades. I don't know exactly what those are. So quite a bit of money assigned to.
That's for this year?
That's for this year.
Membrane end of life, the membranes, I think.
Yeah.
And I'd asked what our Water Services Commission, because Aero Creek has membrane, reverse osmosis membranes. And they have, well, Alan, the commission mentioned earlier, knows how to, you can repair them, or you can extend the life a little bit, but these are different type, they're more cartridge type. So they get to a certain condition and they're gone. So I think that bigger amount is starting to replace those after so many years of the sharper little grit and silt and everything running through them, and eventually degrades it. So there's a permeability test or something. When you flush it or backwash it, I think you'll get a reading that says, wow, these things are not as integral as they should be, and they cure health at some point in life. They can't trust they're doing the job.
Under this facility here, our salaries costs at this point in the year are a bit high, and I'm not sure why. So we've used up 32% of our salaries budget in the first quarter. I don't know why. And I didn't see anything there that accounted for that.
The salaries to ask, because this has happened all the time. I don't know how timesheets are being put in exactly today. It's possible that there was entries for this building, water service, stuff like that, written on timesheets, and they may have been miscoded. And there has to be a journal. Every service has to stand on its own. Every service has to balance the end of the year. So it's possible something was quoted in by a person in one service, and then they'll look at what that person's breakdown was over a number of months in the journal voucher, the amount of time that it should have been against water or something else to that service.
So this might be corrected down the.
Well, it's worth a note. I had a few other questions for Matthew in finance. So I'll put down one just to ask that. Because to me, it's never a good practice to say, well, we'll journal voucher it later. It's December gets crazy. They end up in the first few weeks of January with huge numbers of entries to double check. But that's a possibility. Because that's it.
We haven't had any unusual employment, just regular
And
stuff.
they weren't supposed to put time in for that stuff.
Oh,
Yeah. You got paid double your normal wages.
Yeah, exactly.
And it looked like, the internet work that was covered by CBT was listed as an expense, but I didn't see I didn't see an income, but he had it on his spreadsheet here when he showed it to us.
Yeah, that was the whole.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
was very surprised when they asked Brandon to submit his invoice that they didn't reference a project number or anything.
so it looks like it's been corrected because he had both the grant and the expense offset, but on this one, I didn't see that. Yeah, I think that was the only two things there. The refuse, this is where I get upset at admin costs. For the revenue service, admin costs are 40% of the budget. And that seems excessive to me. Yeah, it's 25, like for this building, it's 25%. So for a small budget, to have a 40% admin seems really high. Yeah. Anyway, man, it's just me. And drainage,
Oh, sorry, Jared.
Yeah.
Can we just back up to the refuse thing?
right?
Correct me if I'm wrong, because it has happened once before. Did we not discuss the commission meeting about paring that back to just one day?
Yeah, and I haven't
What
heard Gary's
And it wasn't there was an announcement that came out with the regional district's budget that talked about changes to some of the other small stations. But Ryandel's was the same. It didn't change.
Well,
I thought,
we were talking about 1 day a week instead of
Yes.
2.
yeah,
If we had to pare that, was the qualifying phrase, I think. So it wasn't that we were going to, but that it was a possibility.
If it was a choice between closing it
Yeah.
or maintaining it, we said, let's go with 1 day,
Yeah.
and that's where we left it.
right. And so I guess that's maybe my question is presumably we're okay to keep going with 2 days then.
Okay, so I'm just trying to open some new and old budgets. I don't want to lose the thing I have for reason. The changes that were made in East Up region, which includes A, B, C, and D. So, the board looking at the efficiency study and how much some places used and where it's not used, it's just not costing money and questionable if the money should be there, but somewhere else. Every year I'm asked, how can you spend this money? So Boswell has been cut down from 2 days a week to 1 day. There's no Wednesday transfer station or recycling availability on Wednesdays, in which just said. A little bit of the savings on that staff time, and there's other savings, but a little bit of that I will go to for me. There's a little more savings at Boswell will not just be the staff. It also involves snow plowing and clearing these small streets is relatively expensive. Because you have to have it cleared before the bins are picked up, you have to have it cleared before public and staff. But you can, which is 1 day a week, both with flexibility on the snow plowing. We won't see the real results on that immediately because snow years are different. So those were the hard changes made on East Shore. And there are other changes made at other states. On the waste transfer. On the recycle, the board direction was to just continue to recycle. Because it takes a fair amount of staff time and it doesn't generate any appreciable revenue. We get paid any bit of money for the value, piece of the value, the eco fee that we all pay. You buy something that's packaged, this cardboard and plastic. It costs you money, 0.001 cent or whatever. And then the consortium keeps most of it. They're Reading for Life and their distribution centers and sorting centers, and then their life up the same. We pay the total. So little sites, the cost of hauling, the cost of staff, and all this stuff, and it just makes no sense. So it's a bit of an experiment. Use that here, where people start putting in the garden. branch, the landfill will find. So the reason I brought the conversation is that you can't use the recyclables under one portion of the budget, but it's the same service. Some legally, within the provincial rules, within one service, we can allocate money different ways. Partners in the service might question, what do you do? You're spending the money from people who live in Canyon, Lister, and West Preston to have the recycle thing here. It recovers pennies on the dollar of actually in material. We know the volume's very low, the waste volume's very low, and so some people are probably going to Proctor Bay. So what do we do? Proctor Bay is a core depot. Consortium pays all the hauling for the recycling at Proctor Bay. The local tax area A, B, C, and town are paying the hauling for the recycle from here. That's the deal. This offer agreement through the province as monopoly, and they those kind of conditions to it. The recycling was changed. That brought up the point that you're not going to have the recycling. Would you need the garbage twice a week? Because no one can save on stuff. Now, it may complicate things when it comes to the hauling, because if a lot of people come on that one day and the bins are full, people go mad, you might get bags left at night outside the bin, all kinds of stuff. The more frequently you haul, more opportunity you have to call up and say, hey, we need something from this bin. Yeah. So we'll find out how it works. But you guys would decide to make the recommendation to reduce the service level. And I've mentioned this on this building. You guys are asked to make recommendations on the service level. You can say, close everything from here, that wing, close it. No custodial, this, no that, shut the furnace down, you'll save money. You lose opportunity, different service level. So the decision of the service level of waste refuse is hanging. So if you guys want to have a more full conversation, if you want Willie Wolf or Amy Wilson, the people closer to the thing that come online, like Craig did, and talk about it, we can absolutely set that.
So the recycling is being shut down.
Yeah, it is just not a feasible site to keep this.
So
So
that
if you agree
really,
or not, it is a bigger decision than any of us sitting right here.
but that really does go against the whole, urgency of the RDCK to promote
We have,
responsible environmental use.
we
I
have,
mean, it's an absolute contradiction.
okay, a few hundred pages. I'll make it available. I'll make a note now. Read them. We already, per capita, have more opportunity to recycle than most regional districts in the entire province. We already do better. So you can go up to Smithers and other places and make the same
But
statement.
because people are doing worse, doesn't mean we shouldn't do better.
But every time I sit at budget meetings with the 300 people in Creston, we're paying this, they say, how can you save money and reduce our property taxes? That's one way, not to be so much better than the rest of the province. And that's one of the little pieces, the $5,000 and $10,000 here and there. I mean, I've got into these conversations with my partners and made 2 recommendations on cemetery to save $20,000 a year. And town council afforded me there, but I'm not letting it go.
So,
We have to look for these things.
so the suggestion that we cut the service in half didn't have any impact whatsoever.
So is that a recommendation from this commission?
Yes,
Yeah.
it was 1 day instead of
Did
2.
we do it as a board recommendation?
Yes, that was a formal
I'm
recommendation.
sure we did.
Yeah, and then we will see how that pans out.
Yeah. So that it hasn't been made.
No, if that's gone to the board, see a lot of recommendations. I see my 1,200 plus pages every month. Pull it up now while you have the rest of the conversation if you want. I can tell you if it was on last agenda. If you let me wait till next Tuesday afternoon, I'll see the.
No, it's not, but it's definitely,
If it's in flux, I can't tell you today whether we saw it or whether it's.
it was a definite recommendation.
Yeah.
So I think it's in flux.
So should we add that as a business item so it don't get
Sure, for next meeting,
for
Follow
the
up,
next-
follow up on,
follow up, just to
use S189, service level for S189. So,
let's do that. Remind me in case I forget.
it's one day versus.
Let me, where's my agenda here?
So probably a lot of the cost is hauling it, eh?
Hauling is always gonna be a fairly fixed cost, yeah.
And if you don't have the payload when you're hauling it,
And you're
you're gonna pay.
hauling it.
But a big part of that was salaries. That's why we went to the 1 day, couples, you cut the salaries.
Yeah.
And that's a big impact.
I did open it up here, so, but, well, let me see, they opened up a couple of years. I'm sure, so 2022, in 2021, salaries and overtime was $1,500. Contract and service, $800. So let's jump, I opened up last year's. 2025, salaries was $2,150. Calling was $16,000. Yeah. So hauling's gone up way faster than the none of our people are paid as much as we're paying to have a truck burning diesel running up and down over that 5-year window. I just opened 5 years apart, 2 budgets. Hauling is the killer right now. If everybody here was to do what everyone else does and drives, you would have less of a drive than I have to the property. And I have property, I don't always have the luxury of being able to go to Boswell. There's lots of people who are more distance than you are. When you haul yourself, okay, that is the most efficient.
But nobody's checked, I mean, what percentage goes into the landfill straight?
Percentage.
Like, who's monitoring that? Like,
We always, this is where I can give you hundreds of pages of reports showing how we compare across the province, what we throw away, what we recycle, all of that's audited. We're required by the provincial government to audit in what's going in. How many kilograms per person per.
but will we ever know if you shut this recycling down, how much of that recycling winds up in the landfill?
Important. Each consortium, the light consortium, have to be responsible for the 2 pieces of this, the plastic and the cardboard. They're audited provincially.
Yeah, but how would we know? How would we know what percentage of the stuff that went into the recycling now be in the landfill?
Because they have to measure.
How did they? I don't.
This company, Sylvania, reports how many ounces of plastic and cardboard and how many millions of pieces they put out across their hundreds of products. They report the tonnage they sell into the market. And they report the amount of money they collect in e-copies. And then the people who and that's all added up. Sources of paper, plastic, whatever, by type of plastic. Then the people who receive it make an estimate. I've read all the reports for years. They estimate of the product sold into the market, did 75, 80, 85% of it ever make it back.
But I'm just looking, this particular place, there is no way you're going to know. Yeah.
You wouldn't want to.
Although you would. You can use that as an argument.
We can't afford. The government told us they wanted us to audit the garbage bags. What hits the garbage of plastic is not recycled. We tell them the greater plastic by weight. You would have to pay staff to take dirty, contaminated garbage, pull out what appeared to be plastic, wash it, dry it, grade it by weight, and we said we are not doing it. And they said they put it on the pole. So at what point are we wasting your money trying to
No, but I'm saying you just don't know that you won't know the impact.
We know globally the impact,
But not
of system is over.
Not low.
And we can't afford as a society to try and understand it. Well, I can understand that.
Yeah.
I think the issue here too is like I use Crawford Bay and I do shopping when I'm there. I do a bunch of stuff. They do that. Take Krista's out. Because it's the way we go, it's not that hard, right? It's not that big an issue. People, whether people recycle or not, it's not going to change. You know, so people who recycle. People that don't.
I don't know if that's true.
I mean,
because there's a lot that goes into this research.
Oh, yeah.
It's busy.
Oh, yeah.
It might not show statistically as a lot, but there is a lot. You go there and the bins are full,
Well,
Yeah.
it's a full, that's great,
you know.
but I'm still saying, going the crop, we go that direction, everybody. It's not a huge one. It's not a huge one to me, you know, it's my little trip, I guess, every week.
If all the small communities on East Shore were to lose their garbage and recycling, would property days that be open, be greater?
Hey, there are no other small communities except this separately funded refugee service, Proctor Van Bos.
Okay, well, those,
We closed recycling, Johnny's store, Great Creek store, at Lakeview, did we have it at Windle Market? Closed them. Partially because the consortium's required that everything's gated and locked and only open when there's an attendant. So we talked to these retail stores, they said, we can't have all the cars arrive on a Saturday morning between 11 and then 2 o'clock Saturday afternoon. It's a business boost they don't need and they can't have. So they wouldn't offer us the space. So we've closed almost everything, yet still our recycling rate is very good. I've taken the position, let's not get any less. But we don't have much else left to work.
but if Boswell closed and this closed, would property be open the next day?
Well, we would ask them. There's hundreds of pages of reports. I just started opening this. I'm not going to get to us. There are very detailed reports of what's collected at each site and how many hours each site's open. So the tonnage per hour is like time of day it's collected is monitored. The days of the week is monitored. Whether they're commercial haulers or individual haulers. So we then judge, well, should we close one day a week or should we change the hours? Open earlier for commercial haulers and close earlier, extend the day, reduce the day to optimize the line that comes through.
There's quite a
It
bit.
is continually done. And the reason we do it, we constitute under provincial law, monitor the space. It's huge business.
Yeah.
The monitoring of it, when you say you don't like to get the fees, the overhead, that all costs money. And the more little granular sites you try and account for, it's disproportionately expensive versus the big sites.
Mhm.
But it is monitored. I have met with these consortium heads, I've asked their executives, they met with. You will pop off myself down in Vancouver. We've had this argument back. Long time, they were not meeting the targets. Provincial ministers turned the screws, they made the targets more stringent. We are fairly efficient in this province in terms of recycling. And in this regional district, we have more opportunity than most. Problem with this regional district is distance, because you've got a little population spread over a massive geography. And we're trying to balance. And it's a board decision.
And Crawford Bay is open 3 days a week. Now.
Yeah, well, we're gonna go to, Sunday,
Tuesday,
Friday,
Is it Friday?
Thursday.
Thursday.
Sunday's pretty busy. I was there today. They're, not busy, but it's there. And,
There has to be a convenience aspect for people in working like, but you can't say, too bad, you can lose work. You can take your garbage.
Two questions a little bit. A, is the regional district advocating lobbying channels it uses for extended producer responsibility, like to reduce all this junk that we're faced with? Is that
Continue. So,
Okay.
and I'm gonna find it. The biggest current arguments, the province announced it was gonna put mattresses, maybe large upholstered furniture, couches and stuff, into a extended producer responsibility model. And then they deferred. And they gave the silliest reason. They said, well, there's inflation and they don't want to put the cost of the mattress up. I said, well, that's nonsense. And as a whole, we sat in our business. That's nonsense. There's a lot of places you buy a new mattress to take your old one already. You're already paying for a 8-year-old mattress. And then we're already deconstructing them with contracting for our landfills, because you can't throw bunkers in the earth.
Yeah.
We have to meet a compaction target.
The consumer is already paying
You're
that
paying
through taxes.
Paying.
So
to be more efficient. Yeah.
the producer will pass that on to the consumer, but at least we can eliminate maybe getting double dipped for it.
So there's a continuous list of products that are proposed to go into a producer responsibility program of life. And then the province slowly nibbles away at them. And meanwhile, there's groups lobbying, like, we don't make us do that, it costs me. And almost every time, no, it will save money. I've been in Kamloops as a transfer station there only once this weekend. We're cleaning out mom's house and getting things done. She's in assisted living now. And the mountain of mattresses there is phenomenal. It's only 100,000 people. You just can't imagine what's going into the land. They stock a mountain so they can come in and deconstruct them efficiently, far cheaper. But you start throwing those in the landfill, you will not function. And it's, you build a sponge in the bottom all the way up. It's like people who grade a road and put a pack on it. Think they did a good job. Every pothole they filled with loose scrap is still loose scrap. You got to cut it to a certain depth and do it right, or don't bother. And pack on more. That bugs me this time of year because I built roads for a lot of years. So every year there's a list. Every year we know. We have a couple staff who are very keen on this. It's just all they do. But they're the ones who also do all the measurement and the reports. So they do the lobbying.
And does Crawford Bay take soft plastics?
We take the bags stuff, and styrofoam and the whole works, which is why they're often going to call. And they'll do the same as you do, Jen, and stop in the store. So it's for them up here.
It's not tough.
But it's a decision that individuals, maybe you're right, will unite themselves or not.
Yeah, no, I'll leave it. Look at there. Riondel sign.
The financial reports, the quarterly reports, is there any way that those could be distributed to the whole, like the electronic version could be distributed to the whole commission?
If people want them, yeah.
I'd like, yeah, sure. Maybe nobody else does. I'd love to see numbers.
Actually,
Give it to.
yeah. Yeah, either I or Evan will send it.
Okay, thanks.
And we used to have a couple of people on how we mirror it at the same time. I was a couple of people again, because you see things differently as well. It's that is a couple of people.
Nope, as long as somebody's interested, we'll do that. And the Riondel sign. Sylvia Horwood came in this morning saying it's time. Something with that sign.
She's online.
Oh, so Sylvia, let me see here. Did you want to speak to that one while you've got the meeting here? You'll have to unmute yourself.
Might have to give her a phone call if she gave up on this. The other end.
Sylvia, are you there? Yeah, you'd have to unmute yourself, Sylvia. No, I don't.
Old one?
Well, you can look back.
Yeah. So yeah, the sign. Evan, I think, is willing to maybe take a shot at redesigning a new sign for us. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think it's great to do that somehow. They were and still.
That's a sign coming into town?
Yeah, yeah.
Can we put a new sign up?
I think so.
We're just gonna renovate the existing sign.
Suggest it hangs on the existing posts.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah,
Never do anything else. I was told all these licenses of occupation expire. But, if the ministry has a stack of licenses on a computer and they expire every so many years, easier for them to send out a notice as to who want to renew or not. And right now, for whatever reasons, they're not renewing. A lot of them are only 5 or 10 years. But in the same post, they can tell you who I've debated it with ministry in Nelson, maybe after the meeting.
Let's strike that whole conversation. Yes.
But yeah, so Evan, if you get us a redesign, we can get a cost.
Yeah.
To do it, and then we'll just.
I have something. 2 months.
Streetlights, Mike, that's those.
My question about streetlights is sort of twofold. So the cable society has been replacing bulbs and sensors and stuff. We have a bunch of bulbs, but we don't have any sensors. What I understand, I thought I saw in the budget that there was a project to commence with LED streetlights. So we will either ask for more sensors, the darkness sensors, or push pause if it's gonna see LED streetlights. Right?
So that's my, that's my blurb of the month.
Right.
So, yeah, it's fine. So Uli has just given me a bit of update. Uli Wolf, he's head of environmental services. And there's 2 sites that aren't the LED level of lights right now. So he's working on getting some pricing and trying to get them into the capital fund as firm items. So right now for this community, his basic replacement, he's looking at costs could run $70,000 to $85,000 to get the basic LED with its own electric on off my day with a, he called 100 watt. I'm not quite sure how that compares to what they're at. The reason he sent me this email, we had conversations here, and I don't know if you were sitting with the commissioner or not. Ross, I think, and others brought this up. There's dimmable LED luminaires that are programmed. And so you can have a certain lighting level at maybe in full. And then a couple hours later, they might go to 60% and then it go down to 30%, stay at 30% through the night till pre-dawn, then they break up again. The idea being that. And once it's dark, if there's fewer people on the street, maybe you just don't want that. Look. So when we started looking at the numbers, he hasn't given me partners, but he says there's quite a difference. So he wants to know if it's worth it. Is it worth getting the fancier program? See, I mean, I've seen them first. They have their own fancy little chip for it. And then you can do all kinds of things. I think Calgary spent $1 million to spend huge money on lights on the bridge. So it could do different things, different patterns, different all these things. So Uli's question was, should he get underway with this? He was thinking, like, if it's $85,000 range, and I've just opened up those 2021 insurance, your utility cost was $51, and your cost for the year is $96 total. Because you had some replacements, repairs, $1,000. In 2025, your utilities were only $1,500. But some of them were replaced with more efficient units. So even though electricity's gone up a bit, 5 years, your electric bill hasn't gone up. You've had more cost maintenance and repairs. You're spending closer to $11,000. This year, you've taxed $15,000 in preparation for what? You have to borrow money or do things and start a replacement. And the draft budget for the next couple of years will be up to $22,000. So there's a couple options. Uli was saying the first calculation, you probably have to borrow over, say, 8 years to pay for these things. If you buy a chunk, and his numbers are reliable, and you borrow for more than 5 years, you need to have voters. There's a couple ways to do it. There's the negative marketing, really what it is, but there's the petition sort of model. Say, we're going to do this if you don't say stop. So that happens is people go around the community and have a petition signed and say, no, don't do this. Do this, don't borrow this. Because these are service levels that are optional to your house to set a service. Another way to do it is to borrow for 5 years or less. And then voters, oh, sorry, and when you're getting voted second, if you don't do it by the 5th, you don't disagree, it's an act. It's advertising at certain dates, times to say stop. Or you do it by referendum. The referendum has, again, very strict requirements. One very clear question, how much will it cost? Impact people. If it's 5 years or less, the regional district is allowed to borrow without 4%. I've done it once in 18 years for Sanko Water because they kept going around in circles. We can't possibly afford this. They said, you are spending tens of thousands of dollars repairing that old infiltration gallery every decade or less with horrible conditions, and it's getting into the valves, placing valves. So I said, guess what? We're going to do an even take. And in 5 years, they paid it off, and the costs are reduced. It's the only time I have recommended what I call a forced borrow in 5 years. You could recommend that here. You have enough money in the budget if you only do half of it. If you picked one end of term and said you want to borrow in 5 years, give that instruction to the role. Budget this. What can you do with the current taxation? The proposed budget is for 21, 22,000. What can you do in a 5-year time? How much of it can you do? And then you just make the application municipal finance must be repaid in 5 years. So something to chew on. My inclination is to tell Uli, if you guys are okay, don't go for the fancy ones, just basic, something we can, if something really bad happened, a tree crushed one, you go down to equal or whatever and just give you average.
So what's the impact on taxes? How much?
Well, right now, this year, your taxes have gone to 15,000 in 9,800. So we've got a provisional budget approved for 22,000 next year, 21,941. So if you don't change the budget, then you will find from $10,000 roughly, you have, there's less than 200 houses on it. It's just so that's because Aspen is not on. But say there were 200 houses, right? Then that would be $50 per house per year at the old. And that will be going to a little more than double next year. We're going more like to 100 per year in that range.
And then you would add the borrowing on top of that.
No, if the 22,000 was local borrowing, your hydro bill is going to go down, won't go up. So if we take, when you had 10,000, you had a few thousand repairs, $6,000 utilities. Then there's the other costs of managing contracts, ordering stuff, it's overhead costs. You don't like to see. So if you invest in the new units and won't use any more power, then you have, say, that extra 10, 12, if you had 12,000 more per year to apply to a loan, times 5, that'd be 60,000. If we take the borrowing of just say,
So that's $100 increase.
No, it would be a $50 to $60 increase from last year.
But last year was already $50.
No, this year is an increase of 0.5. So you've gone from 10,000 to 15. You just saw it this year. You saw $25 per household rough increase. Next year you're going to see a little more, another $30 per household. But that looks like it may not replace all of the bills. So the standard.
Can I ask a question? If these are lights that aren't fancy, what happens when they need replacement? We'll be doing that if the cables.
Always should have been done by courts. And they've argued that the cable society should not have common sense is answered with, yeah, well, right, we can't get out here for a couple months. So somebody changed the bulb. I mean, I've changed the bulbs for my clients in construction of yard rights because I had a G40 foot or something on site. So,
Or it's also averages like 750 months away.
and their quality is high.
Right.
But in theory, if state reports a longer lasting modern life. Cross your fingers, you won't be calling anybody as lost.
Like, that's something to consideration, not just the taxes, but the cost, repair and replacement.
Yeah, no, that's legitimate. I just want to be clear on what the cost is.
So I think really we'll do a clean staff report. Just really bother looking at options for fancier lights that will dim at night to provide the dark side. Or just get basic run of the mill luminaires that'll fit on these poles. So, because that's all answered. The commission.
If the fancy ones are like a 10% more cost, it's
I
40-50% more. I would love to see dark skies, but realistically, I think that's if we're talking 150,000 streetlights, that's a
So I mean, I can ask them. I would say basically go ahead with the basic lights and get stewards. And then as an aside, what is the rough?
And I guess for the commission to consider too, that with the dissolution of the Cable Society, it's to replace any
That's
lights.
yeah.
But you had like 5 or 6 of them either blinking or out in time. So what's left? They're all going to fail.
Yeah.
In a few years. Okay, I will answer Uli that commission will expect to be ready like that. Expect a report on basic units, readily available, easy to maintain. And then just as an aside, what is the rough unit cost for unit for nights ought to do repaint? So he'll give that to us. And I think I'll also say then, is there a way to identify portion of the system to do within the first 5 years? And I shouldn't say this, but something else came to my mind, but I don't know where we're at. There was a allocation. What did I say? Hour and a half ago. But Area A has some funds. We should have had shared pool gas tanks to upgrade these way back when. But her luminaires weren't as bad as another 4 or 5 systems in the regional district. She didn't get any of that pool money. But I'm thinking I should ask Uli if he looks at what can we do in 5-year loan, how much extra would it take to do the rest of the city? Because there's going to be an economy skill here at all. But you can't move building money.
No,
You can't move water system. I could recommend part of the area a gas tax balance. Because I would really rather it all. Is when the new ones look shiny and great and old ones continue to fail, that's just going to cause issues. That was when I read Louisiana. But basic units just isn't something.
realistically, that project is not like we're not going to see replacement streetlights this year.
I didn't know. It's in his work plan right now. So I don't know how complicated it would be to change about. I can't imagine it's so important. Cities have millions of these on the spot.
I guess my question is, if it's not going to happen this year, how does the Cable Society go about getting some more sensors to replace in the interim? Because I think the regional district's paying for the pieces, the bulbs and the sensors.
This service is paying.
Right.
No other service.
So does the commission request that of Uli? Presume?
The commission identifies when maintenance is required. And then I think they waited to get 4 or 5 at a time for nature.
Yeah,
We would need a half dozen sensors.
and they cost how much?
It's me. They're free as far as I just put them on.
Like,
The Cable Society hasn't sourced them.
Okay, and you don't have any more in stock.
I think we have two.
And the field lights were all. That were the up at the top there. It's Russell
Yeah,
and the lights, they're all good now.
Did. It's really good, yeah. So those should, we've got plenty of bulbs. Photon sensors.
Maybe it'd be better to wait for this report.
If this is sort of imminent, then it should.
We can push it through.
Because if we don't have to buy any more, then they'll run along with it. It's part of it. For example, the street light out here never shuts off.
Yeah.
Oh,
We'll take the sensor off then.
and then it never turns on. 6 of one, half of it.
Okay, so we'll hold off a little
Oh,
bit.
yeah.
Yeah, and it'd be good to know how much the sensors cost, because they're not usually expensive and
And I guess that's a new big question, like I said.
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
It's like, I'll just ask, as the side.
okay, and go back here, oh, we did have correspondence. Oh, right, we had a note asking us about doing fire smart cleanup on the trail from the end of Prince through to the campground. And my thought on that is that that's a natural environment. You're not gonna go in and start stripping things out of there. For fire smart, it's a swamp.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's,
I don't see a need,
Isn't that?
and it's tech land as well.
Yeah.
You know, which is a good point.
So was the request just to clean up the trail itself, or was it to fire smart?
I think it was I saw it as the fire smart, the whole sort of ground trail.
So does it make a difference if you just fire smart the trail area, or you can fire smart the whole area?
You know, do I have? Oh, here we go. Let me just read you this here. Could you approach the board with this request should you feel it's warranted? As ambassadors of our town, would you agree to approach Tech if they would allow access to clean out the fallen timber on the Cedar Way pathway to Hearst? Twofold, fire prevention and residents can obtain free deadfall at no expense to Tech. Maybe a supervisor from Tech throughout the process. This is clearly a benefit to many, including safety. Only if you think it's possible or it's been declined in the past, need you forward this request on Tech.
if the campground asking us to do that?
No, this is a private individual.
But mostly it's deadfalls then.
Yeah,
Blowdowns and stuff, yeah.
The old cedar.
yes, that's my point.
Very.
So,
If it's truly a fire smart initiative, it should go to the regional districts. I assume they have a fire smart committee or something. Don't they? Don't they?
No idea.
Sorry.
Going
back to something. We're smart doors.
Does the regional district?
Does the regional district have a fire smart?
Yeah. The regional district, through Nora Hannon and other staff who are throughout the region, putting in priorities for fire smarting the worst areas. One might be, say, Pilot Point. It's all about, couldn't get worse wind than up there. So strong direction. There's all of that's been mapped called the wildland interface. And we have proposed what levels of funding and what stages to do all of this. Province has decided to move on funding of they normally say do through provincial staff or receive granting into the Forest Enhancement Society BC, which is a fully provincially controlled board, the Dane Point. And said, okay, we're going to give them, they're giving them $50 million increments every year or two. And they're saying, okay, you guys look at the risk, highest risk, highest priorities, and start making allocations of money. Regional district no longer has control over any of the money. You used to get identify here's another beach you can work with. It's all done through FASBC. Nora and maybe Dan Seguin, who you got, some of you got as well. You know, I mean, you used to live there. Are advising on that and making the case for our recipients. The most work being done on the fire starting, they're trying to funnel through community forests because they have everything they need in terms of, you know, registered professional forester, they need hydrologists when they need, and if there's merchantable timber, they know how to do it right. We had some trees taken down here, and it's great debate over even giving it away as fire. In theory, there's value in royalties to go to the province. There's more work than this. So community forests have been doing a lot of effective fire smarting where they have activity. The amount of money allowed this year is less. Last year they had a couple of funding streams. They have the major fire smarting work when they do, you know, full stands or thinning or whatever they're doing. And they also had the fire smart community funding and individual rebate, individual fire smarting of houses of properties. They ran out of money last year for their funding. I've been receiving questions, even though it's a provincial issue, from different people saying, hey, I never got my rebate. So I've got responses back. Yes, they're taking some of the money from this year to back pay the rebates that they didn't get to last year. So this year, there's not going to be a whole lot of period. It is a period of austerity, probably like we haven't seen for years. Okay. Whether they would be able to dip into that or not, I don't know. We got permission to fire smart around the water treatment plant from TEC a decade or so ago. We put that expensive water treatment plant. We got permission to bring contractors on fire smart that. We also money to go sell the village as well, as well. I didn't expect to see a lot of it. If there was anywhere that was going to be done in Area A, personally, I would say Pilot Point. Because go for a walk through that little lighthouse trip. So much fuel on the ground, it's scary. It is a very unique place. So yeah, these are nice ideas. Tech might say we don't want you walking on our property.
Well, they approved the trail.
No, I know they approved it, but
Yeah, so just to respond and say we can't give you permission, and Tech likely won't give you permission.
well, just contact Tech. All he knows how to do it. Yeah.
Oh. So do I contact him? Is that what I do?
Well, no, Parliament President has all the contacts with Tech.
They're trespassing
They ask
on
through him.
that property.
It'll go to Moss. Harley Curzon's got all that. He's dealt with them for the trails and stuff. Maybe that instead of it being a commission issue,
Well, I just forward this to.
be sure to invite the association.
Yeah.
Maybe they can be more direct decisions. They have all the contacts.
Oh. All right, think that, very briefly, a financial report. Evan just put it together for our month. Very simple. We took in 200 and, we spent $203.59 on fuel, in April. And we took in, almost $900 in refuse tickets, and $350 in rentals. And an extra $120, so almost $1,000 in refuse tickets in April. So we've got our rentals have been unusual in the sense that there was like Terry's rental, and we've got another rental for the summer for the auditorium, and they also gave us $100 for chairs. So,
That's quick.
Yeah.
Still do not understand. So when you say we, you're referring to the commission.
yeah,
So how does the commission get
For the refuse.
when when the RCA is renting those.
I guess, yeah, that's, yeah, we have to, I don't know, maybe you should just be charging the rental.
Maybe we can talk about it on Thursday or.
Sure, yeah.
I can,
Yeah, well, this is brand new because you've never rented before.
yeah.
So, you know,
We need to, yeah.
you know, in,
If we don't get things.
yeah. Well, the point was that, you know, you were using that and we were giving up rent. We were giving up user fees.
Right, but you RCA gained a lot of rental income from us renting.
But can we be clear? RDCK, that's some, that's, Edgewood, that's Nacuts. They get nothing. The only place any of this money goes is right here.
Okay.
Right? There's no break off the RDCK.
I was trying,
It all stays in this budget.
that's what I was trying to ask, where does that money, that money,
Stays in this,
what does it do though?
it offsets the overall cost of the entire facility.
Okay,
But that is the regional districts.
It's regional district is required to account for it and not allowed under provincial money to spend it on anything except the real costs of the system.
right.
Yeah.
And as a rule of thumb, all recreation facilities are regional district, the big ones, are mandated to try and recover 30 to 35% of their operating costs through user fees. Not. And that's what's called public benefit of the recreational facility.
Sure, and I agree with that, but I'm just. There should be some value to the RCA too. If we pay rent, if we draw in users and we have to,
Public benefit.
Yeah, well, that's the arrangement we had with the activity room where we gave you 40% and we took 60. Because we were using your stuff in the activity room, your chairs,
Right.
you know. The auditorium is a little different because that stuff is all belongs to the commission, to the building. It's not, you didn't purchase those chairs.
No.
You know, none of that is, but, you know, we could still probably work out an arrangement where, you know,
we put the baffles in.
you put the baffles, but you got a grant to do that, right?
We did the work for it. We put in the equipment that people use.
That's
for
true.
Activities for that. I'm not, I don't wanna sound miserly, but I just feel like there needs to be some.
Clarification.
Recognition.
To the RCA, so that we wanna keep doing it, otherwise, why would we want to?
And I think that's why Craig talked to having the agreements and all of the contributions and stuff.
Yeah.
But it's very clear that this stuff didn't appear out of thin air, it appeared out of community.
So, and I totally understand, and that's the part, where I like the post, but I don't understand the rules before we started.
Money won't leave the community, that's.
Yeah, and I think just to be clear, when lay people like us refer to the regional district, recognize that they're not taking money from Jim and giving it to somebody in Yak.
Well, but they are giving it, some of it to Craig, and some of it's to Durham.
Right.
If only there's.
For their services for us, yeah. When we talk about the regional district as an entity, recognize that their focus is on, we talk about that, focus is here.
Yeah. But anyways, we can talk about it, just so that everyone on the board understands.
Well, yeah, it would probably be an arrangement similar to what we had with the activity room,
Well,
you
let's,
know.
yeah.
But I don't, you know, but then we'd also have to talk about what we want to charge for rent. You know,
I agree. Anyway, I think as a commission topic, it's not really something wholesome, right? Because the RCA, many members of the RCA.
so well, I should give you a copy of our rental charges.
Sure, that would be good.
Yeah.
I have a copy of the rental contract, which is pretty minimal, but it's fine.
Yeah,
And Ruth and I have been working on specific to the 3 rooms. But I realize there's background here that I don't.
Yeah, you know, and we've had separate charges for locals and
Yeah.
people who aren't local, you know, and things like that.
Okay,
But given the fact that you are renting it now,
yeah, and, you know, maybe more prudent step would have been to find out all that was involved and then make the decision.
I don't think it's life or death.
I don't think it is.
Pretty simple.
I just wanted to be clear.
But in the meantime, all that money just goes back into the building.
Okay. Okay.
All right. Geez, sorry for the length of the meeting.
Is Sylvia still there? Or did she come?
She's online, but not unmuted, not camera, but
Sylvia, if you're still out there and you want to say something about the sign, we do have public session here, right at the end. You're welcome to say something.
16 and a half.
We may have ordered to sleep.
Quite possible.
I don't know.
No, I think it's all right. She wanted that addressed and we did bring it up, so, I think that'll be fine. And she can get in touch with us. She can get in touch with us if there's anything. All right, so, next meeting is June 2nd, pretty early June. And motion to adjourn. And you're adjourned. And again, sorry for the length. I'll blame it on Craig.
It was enjoyable. Good stuff.